Captain Rhys Thorne kept his secrets in ink, not in his heart. His ship, the Marguerite, was a floating extension of his meticulous nature. Every rope coiled perfectly, every ledger entry precise, every course plotted with mathematical certainty. He dealt in information, a commodity more valuable than spice or silk in the bustling ports of the late 18th century. For the right price, he would transport a sealed letter from Cape Town to Copenhagen and ask no questions. This particular letter, handed to him by a nervous clerk in a Lisbon counting house, was heavier than most, its wax seal imprinted with a signet he did not recognize. The fee, however, was substantial enough to silence his curiosity. The voyage north was to be a simple one, but on the third night, a gale rose from the southwest, a brute of a storm that tossed the Marguerite like a toy. Rhys, fighting the wheel, was thrown against the helm, the heavy letter in his breast pocket taking the brunt of the impact. The wax seal shattered, and the parchment, now exposed, fluttered in the wind. Cursing, he snatched it and retreated to his cabin to assess the damage. He expected words. He found numbers, page after page of them, column upon column of flawless, elegant script detailing sums of money, dates, and coded initials. It was a ledger, but as his eyes, trained to find patterns, scanned the pages, a cold dread settled in his gut. These weren't merchant accounts. The sums were too vast, the destinations too varied. Funds moving from Paris to the Americas, from London to the Caribbean. And then he saw the key, scribbled in a different hand on a loose scrap that had been tucked inside. For arms, G. For grain, L. For loyalist support. He was holding the secret financial records of a vast, international conspiracy, a network funding a rebellion, or perhaps a war. The initial at the top of the page, the one authorizing the largest payments, was F, and Rhys knew, with a certainty that chilled his blood, that it stood for France. This was no longer information. It was a death warrant. Possessing it made him a target for every power in Europe. He couldn't deliver it. The intended recipient in Amsterdam would surely kill him for having seen it. He couldn't destroy it. The men who had written it would hunt him to the ends of the earth for its loss. The Marguerite limped into the neutral port of Antwerp, not Amsterdam. Rhys, a man who had built his life on discretion, made a reckless decision. He used the codes from the ledger. He penned a letter to the initial F, care of a Parisian bank mentioned in the documents. The message was simple. The ledger is in my possession. The Marguerite is compromised. Instruct. He was throwing a stone into a hornet's nest, hoping to see which way the hornets flew. The response came not by letter, but by a woman. She boarded his ship at dusk, her gown of dark wool too fine for the docks, her eyes holding a calm, unnerving intelligence. She introduced herself as Elise. "The man you were to meet in Amsterdam is dead," she said without preamble, her voice low. "His network was compromised. You have in your possession the last thread of a web that stretches across empires. My employer wishes to thank you for your caution." Rhys studied her. "And what does your employer suggest I do with this thread?" "Burn it," she said, her gaze steady. "But not before we use it. You have a ship. You have a reputation for being a ghost. We have names. The ledger contains the routes, the accounts, the methods. We can dismantle their operation from within, redirect their funds, star their ambitions." It was an insanity greater than the storm. He, a mere messenger, was being asked to become a saboteur. But as Elise laid out her plan, he saw the meticulous logic in it. It was, at its heart, an act of supreme accountancy. He would not be fighting with swords, but with numbers, with false ledgers and redirected payments. And so began the most dangerous voyage of Captain Rhys Thorne's life. The Marguerite became a phantom, sailing under false manifests, its true cargo the devastating knowledge in its captain's strongbox. With Elise as his guide and strategist, they traveled from port to port. In Cadiz, a shipment of muskets bound for a rebellious colony was misplaced. In Kingston, a chest of gold intended to bribe a governor found its way to a hospital instead. They moved in the shadows, two ghosts rewriting the ledgers of power. They were pursued, of course. Men with cold eyes and sharp knives asked questions in taverns. But Rhys's knowledge of the sea and Elise's knowledge of the conspiracy's inner workings kept them one step ahead. In the close quarters of the ship, amidst the tension and danger, their professional respect deepened into something more, a partnership of the mind that slowly warmed into a meeting of hearts. One evening, anchored off a deserted Caribbean quay, Rhys took the salt-stained ledger from his strongbox. The pages that had once filled him with dread were now a testament to what they had accomplished. "It's done," Elise said softly, watching him. "The network is broken. The war they planned will not happen. Not for a long time, at least." Rhys looked from the ledger to her, and then at his ship. He had spent his life valuing order and precision, but he had found a greater purpose in chaos, and a deeper truth in the unpredictable calculus of the human heart. He walked to the ship's rail and dropped the ledger into the dark, forgiving sea. He turned back to Elise. "The accounts are settled." The Marguerite sailed on, but its captain was no longer just a keeper of secrets. He had learned that some ledgers are meant to be balanced, and others are meant to be closed forever, their ink washed away by the boundless, cleansing sea.